My name is Rebecca Johnson, and I love Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And I am publishing a series of videos exploring the reasons why I am such a fan of Zack Snyder's film. In this series, you'll find my thoughts on topics that matter to me, like Larry Fong's cinematography, character analysis on Lex Luthor and Lois Lane, the Christian imagery, what I find hopeful about the movie, and yes, I'll address the critical reception. So if you're interested in any of those topics, I hope you will get something out of this series and find out why Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice has had such a profound, heartfelt, and inspiring impact on my life. Welcome to the Duck Milk Prod YouTube channel. My name is Rebecca Johnson, and this live stream is part of a series I am calling Reading Reviews with Rebecca, which will analyze the critical reception of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice through the negative reviews written by top critics from Rotten Tomatoes, one review at a time. This is not meant to belittle anyone's opinions, but rather serve as a study of art criticism and how we discuss film, and just to kind of have fun with it, because sometimes this is hard to get through. So part of this is just having fun talking about films. I'm hoping that this endeavor will encourage all of us, including myself, to be better consumers of cinema. This week, I'll be reading through a review from The New Republic titled Batman v Superman: Battle of the Boers, written by Tim Grierson or Tim Grierson. I'm not sure which, so Tim, I apologize if I've mispronounced your name, so I'll just aim to try to do both of them, both of the pronunciations that I think it might be, just in case. You can click on the link in the video description of Tim's review if you'd like to follow along and read it for yourself, and I encourage you to do so. If Tim should ever see this video, I just want to say that I'm aiming to do this as civilly and analytically as possible, and I would ask that anyone watching live or posting in the comments would do the same. I am simply taking a look at the criticism for and of BVS, now from an historical point of view, given that these reviews were used by Warner Brothers in their decision-making process regarding the DC Extended Universe. Due to the poor reviews for Batman v Superman, the tone and approach to the franchise were changed for Justice League, and ultimately led to the destruction of the Snyderverse 5-film arc and the inclusion of Zack Snyder himself. Before I get into Tim's thoughts, I'm sure there are some viewers who might think, Rebecca, who are you? What do you have to say about this? Tim is a professional film critic from the New Republic. So what do you have to say to critique what he's critiqued? And I think that's a fair question. I would be asking it myself if I was not doing this. So I'd be asking it for somebody else if they were doing it. So I'm just going to provide a little background about me, and hopefully that will help fill in some of those questions and provide answers. I graduated from the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, with a degree in telecommunications and film and a focus on broadcast television production. While I've never been to film school, in my television and production experience, I've learned about and have lots of practice in operating cameras, shot composition, and editing. Lighting, green screen, and audio are my weak spots, admittedly, but I've been working on those. After working in local TV news, running cameras, and working in production, I got a job at Turner, now Warner Media, or whatever they're calling themselves now, for 14 years. I worked with networks, or brands as they call them now, like TBS, TNT, Adult Swim, Cartoon Network, Boomerang, True TV, and Turner Classic Movies as a video encoding specialist. I also did a fair amount of closed captioning work and DVD and Blu-ray QC. In case you are wondering how I podcasted about Supergirl and the DCEU films while working for a Time Warner company, I actually got permission and clearance from my human resources representative. If you think I wouldn't criticize stories that were under the same corporate umbrella, that was never a problem nor a concern for me. If I thought the Supergirl TV series or a DCEU film had faults, I said so. In the last 17 years, I have served as a director, technical director, and camera operator at my local church in a live production capacity. I've been a video editor for 17 years, having worked in Avid, Final Cut, and Premiere Pro CC. In my day job, I shoot and edit news and documentary-style video content that involves interviews and narrative storytelling. I'm also currently an amateur photographer and am aiming to improve my efforts in still photography. You can check out my work over at Instagram at The Derby Kid. Link is in the video description below. While discussing these film reviews, music and film scores will inevitably come up. It may be good to know that in my life I have played piano, handbells, clarinet, bass clarinet, bassoon, acoustic guitar, and have even started learning how to play the ukulele. I've played in marching bands, symphonic bands, and wind ensembles, and have sung in many choirs. While I don't consider myself a world-class musician, far from it actually, I do know some things about music and am a big fan of film scores and soundtracks. In addition to my production and musical experience, I have had lots of experience in art criticism. I've been podcasting about television and film since 2009 and do so on a regular basis with Supergirl Radio, a podcast I co-host about the CW Supergirl TV series. I am also a writing contributor to the Justice League Universe podcast that offers analysis on the DCEU films. You might even hear my voice occasionally in recordings and audio commentaries over there. I'm not an expert, but I care deeply about film, television, storytelling, and art. So I hope this gives you a background on where I'm coming from. All right, now that we have gotten that out of the way, let's get into Tim's review of Batman v Superman. I always like to start with the title or the headline of the article. For this one, it is Batman v Superman, Battle of the Boers, with a subheading that says, with Dawn of Justice, Zack Snyder turns a superhero showdown into an indigestible mope fest, unquote. So at least with this title, some effort went into this. It's not all that clever. We have read variations on this this theme before. A lot of reviewers did do the Batman v Superman something. So it's not the first time we've seen this, but I guess it's better than no effort, I suppose. So I will give Tim some credit for that. The quote, indigestible mope fest, unquote. Not sure what that's about just yet. Maybe we'll get that when we get into the review. Hopefully Tim will clarify what he means by indigestible mope fest. Hopefully there'll be some good argumentation for that. Okay, so getting into the review, the first sentence really tells us where we're going, I think, with this one. All right, so quote, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice is a joyless slog, filled with scenes of gloomy characters confronting their demons or wrestling with their insipid moral quandaries. It's not a superhero movie so much as it is an excruciating therapy session in which there are occasionally huge explosions and guys in capes. The template for how to make a great Batman movie laid out by Christopher Nolan in his Dark Knight trilogy, grounded characters, a somber tone, believable emotional stakes, has now been pureed by Man of Steel filmmaker Zack Snyder into this indigestible, posturing 2.5-hour mope fest. In the past, the man behind Watchmen 300 and Sucker Punch has let style suffocate substance, but even his misfires have always had a welcome kink or spark to them. By comparison, Batman v Superman is simply soulless, which is strange for a film whose main characters are supposedly plumbing the depths of their souls most of the time. I will give Tim credit here for playing on his little words here about pureeing and indigestible. At least there is some some attempt to write something that had a little flair to it with this review. But some of this I do have an objection to. This is clearly a very style over substance argument that a lot of people make with Zack Snyder films, which I think is a little unfair. I think Zack Snyder is a better storyteller than a lot of people give him credit for. But let's get into this paragraph. I got a couple questions right off the bat. Why can't a superhero film tell a story about characters confronting their demons or wrestling with their moral quandaries? And why are the moral quandaries described as insipid, meaning they lack in taste or qualities that interest, stimulate, or challenge? How does Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice lack those qualities? I'd argue that it has interesting qualities that stimulate and definitely challenge me personally. I would also consider anyone who is a fan of the film to be a person of good taste. So I would object and disagree with those portions of the paragraph. Now, this is another reviewer. We've read a couple of these already, and I think I have some statistics. By the end of it, we'll kind of go through some of the things that I've gathered in conclusion back in the day when I wrote my notes. So we'll get there at the end. But I just want to point out that this is another reviewer who mentions Christopher Nolan in regards to Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, even though he only served as an executive producer on this film and was telling a different story with Batman and his Dark Knight trilogy that had a different goal and a different characterization of the characters than what Zack Snyder set out to do. They are different filmmakers with different films and different techniques and storytelling goals. I would also like to know how BVS is posturing, quote, posturing, unquote. That wasn't really explained by the paragraph. I would love some clarification on that. It also looks like this is another top critic from Rotten Tomatoes who really just needed to work that runtime into the review. I don't know why the runtime. Again, I've talked about this so many times in these reviews. I don't know why the runtime is so important. It has absolutely nothing to do with the merit of the film. But for some reason, these reviewers want to bring it up. I guess if you think it's a joyless slog, I guess saying that it's 2.5 hours just makes it seem so much worse. So I guess that's why it's inserted in here. I am seeing descriptions of joyless slog, mope fest, and even soulless about Batman v Superman. But in my opinion, just writing those in the paragraph actually mean nothing in this section of the review. What is that? What does that tell you? Nothing. They're just labels. It's not describing anything with any sort of substantive criticism that's coming after them. Hopefully, maybe we'll, when we read through here, maybe those descriptions will be explained as we get going. But in my opinion, I think it's a terrible review if a writer just writes labels and then doesn't back them up with anything of substance. So we're not off to a great start with this one, but let's keep going. Quote, the movie picks up where Man of Steel left off, except now we learn that Bruce Wayne, played by Ben Affleck, lost friends and coworkers in that film's deadly Metropolis battle when Superman, played by Henry Cavill, and General Zod, played by Michael Shannon, I guess that's a period though, and coworkers in that film's deadly Metropolis battle between Superman and General Zod. Worried that Superman is an all-powerful alien who could decide to enslave humanity at a moment's notice, Wayne begins developing a plan to take down the Kryptonian, unquote. At least this review doesn't put Kryptonian in quotation marks for some unknown bizarre reason. Because that previously happened in a review that we read. This paragraph right here is just, and I'm kind of breaking this one down in terms of just paragraphs to just kind of get everything in there. This one's just retelling parts of the film's premise, and it's correct. So nothing to complain about here. Tim's kind of, for the most part, getting it right. So continuing on, quote, the V in the title suggests a battle royale between these two beloved DC Comics superheroes, and Snyder does a respectable job, at least initially, setting the stage for why these two ostensibly good characters would turn on one another, unquote. I appreciate the objectivity here from Tim, being able to say when Zack Snyder has done a good job with the film, but I sense this is mostly a backhanded compliment, putting a little compliment in there with some a snide remark there. I'd like to think this was written in good faith and actually trying to point out some good things that Zack Snyder did here, but it seems like a backhanded compliment. So unfortunately, that's maybe not a great way to do that. I find that pretty unprofessional myself. I would probably point out the pros and cons and just try to be objective about it. And not take a swipe at Zack Snyder himself. I would probably not. I would aim, at least, not to make it personal. And this is kind of making it a little bit personal because you can tell that Tim does not like Zack Snyder, and so the anger towards the filmmaker is sort of seeping through some of these words. And maybe that's just my reading of it, but that's the vibe I'm getting here. Let's see. I'm just hopping in the comments before we get back into it. So David points out that the reason that so many of these reviewers mention Christopher Nolan is that they think because Christopher Nolan did it the only right way, which I think Christopher Nolan did a great job. The Dark Knight trilogy is one of my favorite trilogies, one of the best trilogies ever made, and I love that iteration of Batman. I love the story that it tells, and I love the choices of the characters and the way they adapted the source material from Nightfall and stories like that. So I I don't have any problem with Christopher Nolan, but I think if you if you assert that it can only be done one way, I disagree with that. I think that different storytellers can have different perspectives that can be just as good if you're open minded enough to try to dig into it. So I don't have a problem with Christopher Nolan. If you saw the things that belong to me personally in my collection, you know that I'm a big fan of Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, Dark Knight trilogy, and also I'm just a big fan of Christopher Nolan films in general. I think he's one of my favorite film directors. So I have no problem with my man Nolan, but he's not the only one who can make Batman on film be good. Let's see. And David also says, asks, wonder how these same people would think of the Batman, which is getting taunted for reusing too many Batman tropes that were in the Nolan trilogy. Oh, that's interesting. So I have not, confession time. I have not seen the Batman yet. I am trying to avoid giving Warner Brothers my money on this, which is sad for me because I've seen every iteration of Batman on film, at least live action. I don't think I got to see the Mask of the Phantasm on the big screen when it came out. But I've seen every live action version of Batman on the big screen. And I started when I was 9 years old. And so this is the only one that I'm choosing not to go see on the big screen. And that's my personal choice. I'm doing that to myself. Uh, and I'm a Batgirl at heart, so I have chosen not to give them my money, and so I'll probably watch it on HBO Max for free once I get my AT&T rolled over. When I got my iPhone at the AT&T store, they said I could get HBO Max for free. So once I change that over, I'm gonna get HBO Max for free, and then they won't actually be giving any money towards it when I watch it later. So that's how I'm working around my personal boycott. So I'm not aware to say all that. I'm not aware of the Batman tropes in the Batman itself, but that's really interesting to hear. So we'll see. I don't know if I'll do a review on the Batman, but it'll probably be a while until I see that. So no spoilers, please. Thank you. Okay. So going back into the review, Tim writes. Actually, let me make sure. Okay. So I'm in the right place. Okay, so Tim writes, quote, in Metropolis, Superman, who goes around town as mild-mannered Daily Planet reporter Clark Kent, there's no use of commas in this review that I find strange. Maybe a good editor could have put a comma in here occasionally. Who goes around town as mild-mannered Daily Planet reporter Clark Kent is now dating Lois Lane, played by Amy Adams, but he recognizes that some on Earth distrust his altruistic motives. Plus, Lois is afraid that their relationship may not work if he's responsible for safeguarding the whole planet. Meanwhile, in Gotham, Wayne is enduring one of the least compelling on-screen versions of his murdered parents' trauma. I just want to reiterate what this is saying here. Okay. One of the least compelling on-screen versions of his murdered parents' trauma. Waking up from his cliched nightmares in a sweat and dully droning on and on to his trusty butler Alfred, played by Jeremy Irons, see ya, Michael Caine, about his superhero misgivings, unquote. I don't know why Michael Caine is mentioned there. Why would Michael Caine play Alfred in this film? Why? Of course it's not going to be Michael Caine anymore. Michael Caine hasn't played Alfred since what, 2012 when The Dark Knight Rises came out? This would have been 4 years later. Why would Michael Caine be mentioned here? I don't understand that. But so we know we didn't just get a Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy mention. We got a Michael Caine here for some reason. Okay. This is coming from a perspective, it seems like it's unable for some of the I can't tell if some of these reviewers either A, they don't know that this is a different version of Batman. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're completely ignorant. Maybe they don't understand the premise that this is a different Batman story, or it's a different take on the characters. Maybe they just don't know that. Maybe they went into Batman v Superman thinking this was a continuation of the Dark Knight trilogy and they were like, "Where's Michael Caine? Where is he?" Maybe they did. Maybe I'm just being harsh. Maybe they were just blindsided by it. Or maybe they have a tough time with change and they just like things the way that they liked it when that thing that they liked happened. I don't know which it is, and I don't know which one is worse. But it's very strange that they cannot get over the hump that this is a different take on the character, especially of Batman. There is a mention of the Christopher Reeve films because, of course, there is later on in this review. But Tim here just he can't get over it. And I actually feel bad for people like that because they cannot enjoy a different take. I think I'm pretty flexible. I'm like, okay, entertain me, tell a story. So I'm pretty open to new versions of characters, especially with Superman. I have so many various favorites of the Superman mythos that I'm kind of like, just give me a good story. I'll go with it, whatever you want to do. So I think the people who are not able to adjust, it's I kind of feel bad for them because they're missing out. Just real quick, there is a question in the chat that I'm gonna get to. Spider-Man. Hey Spidey, how you doing? So Spider-Man asks, are you planning a cinematography video for Zack Snyder's Justice League? Not at the moment. I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna do it, but this Batman v Superman project that I'm doing right now is very time consuming and it's kind of something that I want to see completed before I move on to something else. So maybe perhaps in the future. But I got to get through this BVS project that I'm doing right now because this is something that I set out to do and I want to complete it. I don't want to get distracted by some of those things. So I'm never going to say never, but don't expect that anytime soon because this is what I'm focused on. This is about all I have time for, unfortunately, just with my day job and Supergirl Radio, the podcast I do every week. This is about all I can do at the moment. So maybe in the future is what I'll say. Okay, going back into my notes. All right, so after this paragraph with the mention of Michael Caine, so let's dig into this. So I was with this paragraph when it was mostly just describing the film. When it gets to quote the least compelling on-screen version of his murdered parents' trauma, unquote, it lost me. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of gave up on the review after I read that, and I don't know because of that if I can take this review seriously. I'm really trying here. And so I have a couple of questions about that portion of the paragraph. Is Tim here saying that the opening sequence is uncompelling, or that Bruce's nightmares about that night that we see throughout the film are those things uncompelling? I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about here, but if he's talking about the opening title sequence, whoa, man, have you ever operated a camera? I'm trying not to make this personal, but it if you were to talk to anybody who's ever been behind a camera, who operates a camera, who wants to operate a camera, they would probably I'm speaking in generic terms and I normally don't want to speak on behalf of anyone else. So maybe I'll just speak for myself here. I see that opening title sequence and I'm jealous of it. I'm jealous that someone else did that, and I wish I could do that with a camera. I wish I could do that with the editing and the beautiful visuals of that opening title sequence with the music and everything. I'm jealous. That makes me jealous because I wish I could do something like that. I wish I could be that good at putting something on screen. And I would wager, I don't know for sure, but I would wager anybody who has ever operated a camera would tell you that that opening title sequence is gorgeous. Uh, I don't have that's all anecdotal, but just ask somebody. Put that opening title sequence on to a camera operator you know. And just ask them what they think. I'd be curious. Let me know let me know what you come back with. So I would disagree if it's talking about the opening title sequence. Now, if it's talking about the Bruce nightmares that are happening throughout the film, I think it's funny. Maybe not funny. I guess I think it's curious to me that Tim here doesn't seem to connect the nightmares that Bruce is experiencing to the nightmare with a K sequence, or the nightmares that other characters have. Like Jonathan Kent has them. Lois Lane has trouble sleeping. In the Ultimate Cut, which Tim wouldn't have seen at the time, the film even goes as far as to showing that Clark Kent calls his mother Martha in the middle of the night, reinforcing that our main characters all have a through line of nightmares and being unable to sleep. And it's almost like, just go with me here, it's almost like there's an intentional thematic element from the screenwriter and the director of the film to say something about their nightmares and the fact that it's causing them to lose sleep. What are these things telling you about the characters? What is it about Lois Lane being unable to sleep tell you about her character? What is it about Clark Kent calling his mother in the middle of the night? What does that tell you about his character? What does it tell you about Bruce Wayne, that he's haunted by the night that his parents were murdered, and the fact that he's kind of abusing sexual relationships with women and alcohol and possibly drugs? Like, what is that telling you about the characters? And what does it tell you about the fact that all of them, these are all of our heroes having these problems? What is that telling you thematically and storytelling wise about those characters? That must mean something. It's intentionally there in the writing. I always say on these review analyses that the best question you can ask when you're reviewing something is asking the question, why? Why is that in the writing? Why is that in the dialogue? Why is that in the scene? Why is that for that character specifically? Why is that for all of those characters? Those are good questions. That question in and of itself, that one question, why, can help open the door to any kind of film review or film critique that you want to do. And it seems like to me, and this is just me talking from my perspective, in reading this review, I don't think Tim asked the question, why? So unfortunately, I think that's pretty disappointing for me reading this review, that that a professional film critic wouldn't pick up on that. I find that, to be honest, pretty lazy. If it's aiming to be a film analysis or a film review, film critique, whatever you want to call that, I think it's pretty lazy, and it's very superficial and just uh, uh, kind of top level. It's not digging into the layers. It's not making an effort to actually understand the film. So to me, that's disappointing. Okay. Before I go on, I'll get to another question in the chat. David asks, "What are your Sunday schedules like?" Because I work every weekend now, and it'd be great if your weekly shows start even half an hour earlier. Um, I mean, it's possible that I could start earlier, but it's just easier for me if I have a consistent schedule. It's consistent. If I would like to have a consistent schedule, so that people also know when to hop on here and when to expect it. So that's just something for me, especially because Sunday afternoons sometimes have a lot going on. So Sunday nights are usually better for me. I'm sorry that you can't maybe join me sometimes, but I think I'm going to stick with Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern, just to stick with a little consistency, because I already had to change it because I started with Sunday afternoons at 4 p.m. Eastern, if you'll recall, when I first started doing these. And boy, that fell through pretty quickly. So nighttime live streams seem to be better. I usually have all that stuff kind of finished by Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening. So this is just a little easier for me. So I hope that explains that. Okay, going on. Quote, "But from their separate cities, which apparently are right next door to one another, these two men view the other warily. Kent believes Batman's vigilante justice will result in a lessening of civil liberties, and Wayne is suspicious of Superman's agenda and blames him for the deaths of so many Metropolis citizens. At the same time, there should be a comma there, and there's not. I don't know why Tim is against using commas. At the same time, that Batman and Superman are starting to, well, maybe once at the same time. Maybe I can maybe see why he wouldn't use a comma there. I'm going to keep reading. At the same time that Batman and Superman are starting to feud, a bratty, rich young inventor named Lex Luthor, played by Jesse Eisenberg, has obtained some kryptonite that he wants to trade to the U.S. government in exchange for access to Zod's ship, which contains information about Krypton's superior technology. Unquote. I constantly have this question because I think it comes up a couple of times in some of the reviews that have come before us that we've read before. It seems like reviewers have a problem with the story putting Metropolis and Gotham City near each other. I personally never once thought this was a big issue, but they seem to think it's a big issue, and I don't know why they make it out to be such a big issue, but uh, the story just makes it that way. I think the storytelling, and I don't know if this was a Chris Terrio thing or a David Goyer thing or a Zack Snyder thing, but either way, the storytelling thought it would be interesting if the two cities were sister cities and that they were close together and that they had different atmospheres and different cultures, and that they would sometimes, be engaged in football clashes and things like that. I think it's a more interesting look at the two cities and show why, Bruce and Clark would be connected. And it also makes sense as to why Bruce would have set up an office in Metropolis, because it was just kind of over the river. So it makes storytelling sense. And I don't know why the reviewers seem to have such an objection to this. I don't know why that's such a big deal. Andy says in the chat, aren't there versions of Gotham and Metropolis in the comics where they are literally are sister cities? Either way, they are always on the East Coast, aka they are close-ish to each other. Yes, I believe that is correct. I don't know issue numbers or storytelling continuity stories. I don't know where exactly. I can't pull the issues for you, but that is something that was pulled from the comics at one time. So that has been in the source material, in the canon, so to speak. So again, it should not be such a big issue, but they always seem to point that out. I like that Tim seems to understand both of Clark and Bruce's motivations in BVS. Some folks, in my investigation of the reception of BVS, sometimes people had a hard time with that. Why was Clark mad with Bruce? Why was that such a big deal? But Tim here seems to understand both of the motivations. So I'm going to give Tim points here for being able to do so. But in my opinion, Tim kind of misunderstands what Lex Luthor was up to with the United States government. He actually never wanted to use the kryptonite to trade with the government. I don't know what Tim is talking about there. What and someone can correct me if this is wrong, but Lex wanted the ability to import the kryptonite from the Indian Ocean, and he was asking Senator Finch for the ability to do that. Lex actually keeps the kryptonite for himself and stores it at LexCorp's offices, where Batman then breaks in to steal it. So Lex never gives away or trades the kryptonite to the U.S. government. He was just trying to get an import license to be able to bring the kryptonite from somewhere in the Indian Ocean back to the United States. So that's what that was about. So I think Tim has a little bit of a viewer comprehension issue here. So that's a little disappointing. He was kind of on board with Clark and Bruce's motivations. He understood that, but he didn't seem to understand what Lex was up to. All right, continuing on, Tim writes, quote, Batman v Superman was written by two men capable of telling an entertaining story. Chris Terrio won an Oscar for his Argo screenplay, and David S. Goyer helped on the story for all three Dark Knight films. But Batman v Superman has all the problems of a reboot mixed with everything that's annoying about films forced to fit into an existing cinematic universe. Not only do we have to yet again be reminded that Wayne is haunted by his past, and that's all like in capital letters for some reason. Why why would that be? What why would why would he do that? Haunted is capitalized, by is capitalized, H is capitalized, and the P in past is capitalized. Okay. We have to cram in all the meaningful supporting characters and themes connected to each superhero so that fans won't feel shortchanged. And in parentheses, he writes Lawrence Fishburne, Diane Lane, and Kevin Costner all reprise their roles from Man of Steel. In most cases, you will be hard pressed to recall what they're doing in this movie. Unquote. So I have a couple questions. How is Batman v Superman not an entertaining story? Because it's trying to fit in a cinematic universe? Is that why? Wouldn't it make it more entertaining? That's what I would think if you're going to use that argument. And also, how are Perry White, Martha Kent, and Jonathan Kent crammed into the story of Dawn of Justice? Perry is there to reinforce the idea that Clark is now working at the Daily Planet, and he provides direction for the journalistic part of Clark and Lois's individual investigations. Martha Kent is the crux of the film through the Martha moment. She's very important to what happens when Lex Luthor has his goons kidnap her, and it's very important to Batman and Superman's relationship, as we all know. And Jonathan Kent is there to help Clark on his journey, and as he is in the Death of the Superman comic, Jonathan Kent aids him there as well. Also, Jonathan Kent provides, in my opinion, a meaningful examination of how Clark can overcome his struggles of encountering consequences as a hero, and helps him find a way to deal with that through his love for Lois. Jonathan talks about his love for Martha, and that's paralleled with Clark and his love for Lois. These three characters, Perry, Martha, and Jonathan, in my opinion, are organically woven into the film and all have a reason to be there. They don't take up a lot of time, but when they do appear, they have a reason to be there. So my question to Tim would be, well, what's the alternative? What did you want? Did you want the two title characters talking to themselves through the entire film and not interacting with anyone else? Did you just want the main characters to be there and like nobody else showing up to interact with them? I don't know what you want, Tim. I wish I had more clarification on that. Hopping back into the chat, David says, I think the other senator doesn't have the power to force Senator Finch to allow the import, but he can allow Lex into the ship site in exchange for presumably helping fund his reelection. So that could be a possible explanation as well. Lex does sort of uh, uh, um, overpower the other senator who's with Senator Finch. So yeah, that is part of it. Let's see. And David says to that end, of course, Lex doesn't have to hold up his half of the bargain because fire, and I guess that's related to the Capitol bombing, because that both of those senators unfortunately didn't make it out of that scene. Oh, Spider-Man, just a update. If you're watching the Oscars, which nobody ever does anymore. I used to when I was a kid. I loved award shows. Now I can't stand them. But it seems like Zack Snyder's Justice League won the Oscar cheer moment. I hope it was for the Flash turning back time. I'm gonna have to check that out. But yeah, so Zack Snyder's Justice League won an Oscar. Is that what we're saying? That's awesome. So I just wanted to put that on there. Okay, so so let's get back to that. Okay. Let's get back to the review. Okay, so Tim goes on, quote, but this film's greatest failing is that no one on the creative team ever stopped to remember an important point. It would be pretty damn sweet to have a movie that contains both Batman and Superman, and Batman and Superman are underlined for some reason. And in parentheses, it says, were none of these people ever a 12-year-old boy? In theory, that's the target audience, yes. And that's the parentheses. I don't know why that's in parentheses. The Marvel films have always emphasized geeky fun far more than their DC brethren, so it was little surprise that the writer director Joss Whedon injected a nerdy enthusiasm into his Avengers movies. Deep down, he knew that the sheer pleasure of watching Iron Man riff off Captain America struck a primal, invisible chord with plenty of self-respecting comic book lovers. But you'll get no such fun from Batman v Superman. Snyder and his writers, that should be a period, not a colon. Snyder and his writers are too busy convincing themselves they have significant things to say about American democracy, the fear of terror attacks, xenophobia, and the pain of losing one's parents. Those sound like all great things to take away from the film, Tim. But he also writes in parentheses, Tim really loves parentheses. I don't know that I know anybody who loves parentheses more than Tim does here. Parentheses, don't forget, Superman's got that issue just like the Caped Crusader does. In parentheses, unquote. So, okay, couple questions. I just like to start with questions. How does this film not have Batman and Superman in it? Underlined and underlined. Is Tim saying that because they aren't the characterizations that are fitting for a 12-year-old boy, that they aren't really Batman and Superman? First, these on-screen incarnations are based in comic book source material that presumably some 12-year-old boys have read. And second, how does Tim know what a 12-year-old boy how does Tim know that a 12-year-old boy didn't love BVS? How do you know that, Tim? I'm just curious. And then Tim goes on to say that the Batman v Superman needed to be fun like the Marvel movies. And Tim really goes into a real, like, just a descriptive nature about the Marvel movies and the Avengers movies. Or let's recall he wrote, deep down, he knew that the sheer pleasure of watching Iron Man riff off Captain America struck a primal, invisible chord with plenty of self-respecting comic book lovers. Oh, Tim, that's gorgeous. That's gorgeous writing. I wish more of that happened in this review. But Tim clearly prefers the Marvel movies and made more of an effort to actually describe them. And Tim asserts here, which is not something that's going to hold up to this day. This review is very dated, not only because it's very old, but also because Tim was unfortunately not on the right side of history, and a lot of these reviewers kind of bet on the wrong horse here. But how would they know? I guess how would they know? Actually, I'll tell you how they would know is because Joss Whedon is a subpar average filmmaker, and I've said this for a long time. Day one, I'm just putting this out there. Like, maybe sometimes Rebecca's right about this stuff, and maybe ahead of her time a little bit. Day one, I went in to see the Avengers. I was hyped about it. I loved all of Phase 1. Went in to watch Avengers, and I was like, this was so mediocre. Like, I remember being so disappointed by it because I was like, ooh, people are like phoning in the acting performances here. And I walked out really disappointed. I really honestly did. And I remember, like, when I would get in discussions with people about the Avengers, I would say that they'd be like, wow, how dare you? The Avengers is a masterpiece. And I was just like, no, I thought it was mediocre to almost bad. Like, it was not a great film. And so that kind of was one of the first instances when I realized that I had a lot of unpopular opinions. And then there was the instance when Joss Whedon was about to direct the Batgirl movie back in the day when that was sort of circling around. I remember being kind of on the outskirts of that too. Like, no, I don't want him to direct the Batgirl movie. He's an average, mediocre filmmaker. He's not good at it. He may be good at writing TV episodes. He might be okay directing TV episodes, but he's not a good filmmaker. And I've asserted that forever and ever and ever. And I feel like I'm a little justified now that we have all seen Justice League and all of my validation presented itself. So I just want to take a moment to gloat over my W there because sometimes I did not face a lot of friendly discussions about that. So I just wanted to point that out that Tim here really bet his horse Joss Whedon, and I've always decided no, I would not want Joss Whedon anywhere near my DC heroes. Also, a question about this. So why do Snyder and his writers not have significant things to say about American democracy, the fear of terror attacks, xenophobia, and losing parents? These ideas obviously stuck out to Tim as he watched the film and started writing this review, and he mentioned those things. It makes me wonder why Tim didn't choose to write about those things. If you're mentioning these topics, like that's actually really interesting. If I was Tim's editor, I would want to know what Tim thinks about those themes. What do you think the BVS says about American democracy? What do you think it says about terror attacks? What do you think it says about the xenophobia or dealing with the death of a parent? I would be interested in reading what Tim has to say about those things. But unfortunately, I think with a lot of these reviews, they just put things out there and they don't follow up on those ideas. And those ideas would actually be way more interesting to read and actually give you the perspective of the person writing it. Maybe that would have set Tim apart from some of these other reviews if he talked about what it was like for Bruce Wayne to lose a parent, what it would have been like for Clark to lose his father, Jonathan Kent, or his parents on Krypton. That would have been so interesting. Or Lois is having to deal with the death of Clark, even though they were maybe going to get married soon. Those kinds of things. Of course, he probably wouldn't have been able to write about the death of Superman in this review. We'll get to that a little bit later. But dealing with he could have talked about it through and he probably couldn't have mentioned Jonathan either, because I think that was kind of under wraps and secret until it kind of came out. I don't remember knowing about that until I saw BBS in the theater. Even so, you could still talk about that with Batman. Everybody knows Batman's origin. Everybody knows what happened to Batman's parents. Unfortunately, I shouldn't laugh about that. It's a terrible tragedy. But everybody knows about that with Batman. So you could write about that stuff and that would have set him apart. I just feel so bad for some of these reviewers because it's like somebody let you down. Some editor, somebody, some friend of yours that maybe read over this before you put it out into the world. Like somebody let you down because nobody told you, hey, it's maybe explore this part of it. Send me your stuff. I'd be happy to look over it and maybe give you some notes. I really would. Honestly, I feel like somebody's letting these people down. And I actually feel kind of bad for them. Okay. So continuing on, actually, maybe I should go into the chat here. Okay, let's see. Andy says, in all caps, by the way, which I appreciate because I can hear Andy yelling about this. Did he not see the scene at the Capitol? Did he not understand what Lex was doing with that bomb? Silencing democracy. Ooh, that's a good way to read that. That he was so basically taking your reading of that, Andy. I'll expand on it. So basically, Senator Finch in that Senate hearing says, or maybe she says it in her speech in front of a microphone. She says, what we do is we talk to each other. And I like that reading that what Lex was doing was he was silencing everybody. He didn't want to talk it out. He didn't want to talk it. And that could actually play into, you could connect that to Bruce and Clark or Superman and Batman eventually getting to the point where they could talk it out and kind of come to an understanding. I like that. I really like that. There's so much that you can connect the dots on, and it actually makes for a more interesting reading of the film. Good point. Let's see. David says, so it's not that any superhero movie mustn't tackle that. It's just that BVS may or may not have succeeded in its endeavor, but they want to act like they should never have tried because it's bad. Yeah, it's very frustrating. Let's see. All right, so let's get back into the review. Quote, if any of these potentially resonant themes landed, I feel like they landed, you mentioned them, then perhaps Batman v Superman could be the sorrowful, profoundly felt tragedy it desperately aspires to be. But that would require a filmmaker more nuanced than Snyder. Since 300, he's preferred staging action sequences as if they were slow motion, large canvas works, like paintings of battle scenes that move at one-fourth speed, which gives them a ludicrously, sorry, it took me a while to read that, gives them a ludicrously grandiose feel that's both ridiculous and stirring. But he's never been capable of getting decent performances from his actors, and so they're often left to their own devices, unquote. So a couple questions, because I can only ask questions. I don't know what Tim is thinking. I can't talk to Tim, so I'm just gonna ask questions. So what's wrong with staging action sequences that are in slow motion and that are trying to be large canvas works? I don't disagree that Snyder does those things, but what's wrong with those? I think the way that Snyder does those things are actually beautiful and well done. And what's wrong with creating shots or scenes that feel like paintings of battle scenes? What's wrong with that? Some of those shots in BVS are just every frame is a painting. You could slap that up on a wall and somebody be coming over to your house like, "Whoa, who painted that?" Because they look beautiful. So I don't understand what is wrong with aspiring to do those things. What's wrong with aiming for a grandiose feel? Why can't Zack Snyder do that? So I just have a lot of questions about that. Why is Tim saying that Zack Snyder, a filmmaker, cannot do those things, cannot aim for those things? I don't understand that. Also, it's wild to me that Tim is dogging on the acting performances here. In my opinion, the acting from all involved is on point in BBS, in my opinion. So I'm not really sure what the problem with the acting is. All right, so let's continue on. So, quote, that can be the only explanation for how drab Affleck is as Wayne and how shockingly bad Eisenberg is as Luther. Meant to portray Gotham's billionaire playboy as an aging man, Affleck looks to have put on a little weight for the role and lets his hair go gray at the temples. Plus, his Batman doesn't bother shaving the 5 o'clock shadow when he puts on the mask. But the actor never articulates his character's spiritual emptiness. Mostly, he just mopes and talks low. As for Eisenberg, he's intentionally funny that this it's intentionally funny that this Lex Luthor is some trust fund twit who wears sneaks with rumpled suits. And in quotations, for some reason, he's what Mark Zuckerberg would have been if he truly was evil, in parentheses. Not quotations, parentheses. But Eisenberg usually is superb at conveying insecurity and hyperintelligence simultaneously, brings only a succession of grating tics to the role, failing to suggest Luther's mental duress, or his twitchy genius. His face is eminently punchable, though, unquote. Okay. So it's interesting to me that Tim describes Ben Affleck as, quote, having put on some weight, unquote, for the role of Bruce Wayne / Batman, which makes it sound as if Bruce Wayne was some chubby slob in the film, when in fact Ben Affleck has never, in my opinion, has never looked healthier or more fit. Did Tim miss the whole workout sequence? Did he see Ben Affleck in this film? So maybe he means he put on weight to get more muscular and big. But it comes across, if you had not seen the film, it sort of reads as if he was sort of fat shaming Ben Affleck here, which is not even the case at all. Tim also says that Ben Affleck doesn't, quote, articulate his character's spiritual emptiness, unquote. Yeah, he does. Did Tim miss the big Batman and Superman fight when Batman says, quote, my parents taught me a different lesson, dying in the gutter for no reason at all, unquote? That is the very definition of nihilism. And that that would be, to me, the character's spiritual emptiness. That, I mean, it literally is the definition of nihilism. So I'm not sure what Tim is talking about there. Also, dismissing Ben Affleck's portrayal of Batman down to, quote, moping, unquote, and, quote, talking low, unquote, is honestly, to me, just so lazy, because that's all you got out of his character. It's just moping and talking low. You're not going to dig into the character analysis of that. to me, it's hard when I read that stuff to believe that this is written by someone who reviews films for a living and is actually paid money to do so. I just it's hard for me to wrap my mind around it. If I can do this and I'm not getting paid, why is this guy not doing it? He gets paid to do this for a living. There is so much more to Ben Affleck's version of Batman, and Tim doesn't even bother to analyze the character. And to me, that's disappointing. Tim's analysis of Lex Luthor is just as bad, in my opinion. He mentions Lex Luthor's sneakers and rumpled suits, but he doesn't ask why Jesse's take on the character would dress that way. Could there I mean, I don't know. Could there be a reason for that? Could there be a reason he dresses the way he does in the film? Would that reason say something about his character? Could it be telling us that Lex Luthor knows he has to act like an adult and wear suits, but maybe that he's incapable of that, hence the rumpled and the ill-fitting suits? And the sneakers instead of like dress shoes? Could it be that this is his act of rebellion to go against the status quo of what men are supposed to look like when they dress for work? Could it be related to his daddy issues and the abuse he suffered at the hands of his father? Not even a little bit of an attempt to analyze any of that from Tim. Not, I mean, I gave you a couple of readings on that choice. Tim doesn't even attempt it. Costume designers, if you didn't know, which you probably all did, and you have one up on Tim here. But costume designers dress these characters and these actors the way they do for a reason. And sometimes the actors will contribute their thoughts to it. So the costume designer and the actor will work together. And maybe sometimes the director comes in and adds thoughts there. But people choose these things for a reason. If you asked Jesse Eisenberg about his clothing in BVS, he would probably give you an answer about that. So I just think it's strange that going in with that premise that these people choose these things for the film for a reason, the question why is not asked in this review. It might, if you ask the question why, it might make you kind of learn more about the character or the story, and it might make the film mean more to you than you realize. So I would always just encourage people to ask the question why. It even goes into the costume design department. All right, so continuing on, quote, there are a few trademark Snyder touches. We see plenty of chiseled abs and well-sculpted muscles. Everything is shot in his charcoal gray palette, and some of the epic slow-mo shots can still be arresting. But on the whole, Batman v Superman is a movie that doesn't make sense being told by people who want to overwhelm us with their shows of psychological complexity. A large plot occasionally presents itself. Wayne is curious about the identity of a mysterious woman, played by Gal Gadot, who keeps popping up when he's investigating Luthor. But the film's principal focus is upping the reasons why Batman hates Superman and why the human race starts to turn on Superman, which makes Superman all sad and convinces him that Earth is filled with a bunch of mean jerks who don't appreciate him, unquote. All right, so digging in here. Charcoal gray palette. Like what? Which scenes? Maybe which scene? Which scene or scenes? Which shot? I would love an example, Tim. Doesn't give one. The way Tim describes Snyder's use of slow-mo shows, let's see, what did I write here? It shows to me that it gives off the vibe that Snyder uses, actually, hang on, let me rephrase this. I'm trying to read my own notes. The way Tim describes Snyder's use of slow-mo here gives off the vibe that Snyder uses slow-mo a lot in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and he just doesn't. His trademark speed ramping is largely absent in this film, and there are some instances of slow-mo, but it's not Watchmen or Sucker Punch here. So I don't know really what he's talking about. There is some slow-mo, but it's not the kind of Snyder trademark slow-mo that most people think of. I am glad that Tim admits that some of these shots can be, quote, arresting, unquote. There is some objectivity here that I can appreciate, but again, this instance of it seems like another backhanded compliment. I don't understand why Tim can't just straight up say, Zack Snyder did this well. So I think that is a little strange. And I'm going to fix my headphones because they're slipping off my head. So give me a second. Okay, that is unflattering. So I wanted to stop the camera for a second so nobody has to see my unflattering headphone adjustment. All right, so let's see. So continuing on in looking at this paragraph, just a question. How does BVS not have, quote, psychological complexity, unquote? I would argue that it's chock full of it, and that's part of the reason that the film is so juicy for me to analyze and discuss. That's why I have such a fun time talking about this film. And the last sentence of this paragraph, which reads, quote, which makes Superman all sad and convinces him that Earth is filled with a bunch of mean jerks who don't appreciate him, unquote. That sentence is sadly another reason for me not to take this review very seriously. It doesn't seem very professional to me. I don't think this is reviewing the film in good faith. It comes across as if Tim is just trying to be snarky here because he clearly hates the filmmaker and he clearly hated the film. So to me, this is it's it's being snarky for the Kate for the sake of being snarky and making a joke, but it's not actually really in good faith looking at the film and trying to analyze the story here. Okay. All right, so I think we've gotten to the end. Quote, Warner Brothers has been paranoid about critics revealing any surprises, but I presume it's safe to say that yes, eventually Batman and Superman do slug it out. As a battle, it's hardly royale, and it's justified with such a lame plot point that the whole skirmish could have been avoided if one character simply said one specific thing to the other. Batman v Superman has a scope that makes it feel towering, and that sense of magnitude is only amplified by seeing the film in IMAX. But between the grueling dialogue scenes and the subpar action sequences, okay, I'm gonna keep going. This is a gigantically empty experience. It was bad enough that Man of Steel trampled on the memory of the first two good Superman movies, underlined. I guess the underlines are hyperlinks. When I copied these over into my Google Docs, I guess those are supposed to be hyperlinks. So I'm going to retract my earlier question about why Batman and Superman were underlined. Presumably, those are hyperlinks, and so they probably go to something about Batman and Superman. And then the last sentence is, now Snyder has gone and ruined Batman too, unquote. And the grade that Tim gives at the very bottom of the review is a C minus. All right, so this is yet another reviewer who mentions the message that was given by Zack Snyder prior to the film viewing. It happened for the critics, but it also happened at the fan screening. I remember that happening a couple of days before the film came out in the theatrical release. So I'm assuming that that's what that's referring to as the Zack Snyder message that played before the film. This is another reviewer who mentions that message prior to the film viewing, who requests that the reviews not spoil the film. And I don't understand why the reviewers keep bringing this up. And I've wondered about it. Do they think it makes them seem special that Zack Snyder left them a message? I don't know, but it's not an unreasonable ask from the studio or the filmmaker. I don't think it's an unreasonable ask. I would be curious to know if people get the people who get screeners, are they asked not to spoil things for like TV shows and stuff? I'm pretty sure they are. So it's not an unreasonable thing for somebody to be like, hey, could you just like maybe not say anything about the movie and preserve this experience for the fans? Could you maybe do that and be like a cool person and maybe not spoil that in your reviews? I don't think that's a that's an unreasonable thing to ask for people to do. That's just common courtesy. Also, I have a question about what is lame about the plot. Tim here doesn't really go into that, so I'm curious about that. How could the skirmish between Batman and Superman be avoided if one character said one thing to another? Is this because Superman says Martha? Would Tim have preferred that Superman said it to Batman at the beginning of the film? Would that have been a better film for Tim? It wouldn't have been earned, in my opinion, but I guess Tim would have wanted it that way instead. Would that have been the preference? Man of Steel, there's a mention there in the Christopher Reeve Superman films. Man of Steel was trying to do something new and refreshing for Superman, which was really time to do it. And I think if you see all the Superman things that come out now, they have a lot to uh, thank Man of Steel for. Superman and Lois has a lot to thank Man of Steel for in terms of the aesthetics and the fact that Lois can get on in the secret pretty early, and they don't have to go through that whole triangle for two thing. And you see a lot. At least I do. I see a lot of the after effects of Man of Steel. That Man of Steel broke down some of those barriers so that other iterations of Superman weren't beholden to those old ways of thinking about the character and the storytelling. Uh, so I think actually Man of Steel came at the right time, and it did the things it needed to do to get people to think about the character a little differently and be able to find a new perspective on the character. If that hadn't happened, you would still be getting Triangle for two. You'd still be getting Lois kept in the dark. You would still be getting Donnerverse, 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 Donnerverse. That's what you'd be getting. But Man of Steel broke down a lot of barriers for Superman in terms of the character and the way you can tell that story. So I don't know. I think maybe you're a big fan of the Christopher Reeve version of Superman, and I'm not going to hold that against you, and I'm certainly not going to hold it against Tim. But if Tim just wanted to see Man of Steel be another Christopher Reeve version, it's not gonna work. We know it's not gonna work because we all saw Superman Returns and how that came out. So, uh, they had to do something that was different, and because they did that, it opened the door for other Superman stories that have come since then after it. So I disagree with Tim about that. I also have a question. How did Snyder ruin Batman? I think that's largely unexplained. Tim has a lot of problems with Bruce dealing with his trauma of his parents being murdered, but I don't, other than that, and maybe Batman having a 5 o'clock shadow, I'm not really sure what Tim's argument is for that. I also want to know, how is BVS an empty experience? Could it be because Tim here only saw the superficial aspect of the film and didn't take the time to dig into the characters or the layers of the writing and cinematography and the music and all of those things combined? Because, in my opinion, you get out of it what you put into it. And so, if you didn't get a lot out of it, maybe it's because you didn't put anything into it. That's my question. Like, what did you put into it? I am curious about this C minus rating that Tim gives BBS here. Uh, so if you're familiar with I don't know if other countries and other continents how they do their school grades, but in America, we have an A, B, C, D, and F grading system in schools. A is the highest, F is the lowest. So if you give something a C minus, you're kind of in the middle grade there. That's a passing grade. A D would be pretty bad, but an F is like failed, terrible. You got to take this class over. Like A is like you aced it, and B is like, I mean, you got close to acing it. So C is in the middle ground. It's a passing score, and it's better. It's better than getting down into the low part of it. So a C minus is actually pretty good. I'm surprised that Tim gave it a C minus. Um, it I guess it means that he wasn't blown away by it, but it was also something that didn't completely fail. So why does Tim's review make it sound as if he hated everything about the film and there's nothing redeemable about it? I would want to know why he put it that high. I would want to know the things that he thought were good at, like he kind of just backhanded complimented everything, but didn't actually really talk about the things that he thought were good. So I would have been really I would wanna know more about that than all the things he hated about it. Because if I was to read this, which I did just now, and then I was going to guess what grade he would have got given it, I would have said D to an F. But here he put it at a C minus. I think that's interesting. So I wish that he would have explored a little more about why he at least gave it a passing grade. I would have been really curious about that. Okay, let me see if there's anything in the chat that I need to check out. All right. Okay, so Andy says, because Andy gets some screeners, I've gotten one screener for a Supergirl episode before, and I cannot remember if it was for Blind. What was that episode title? Blind Spots in season 6 of Supergirl. I got that one screener. And I don't remember if somebody told me not to spoil anything, but I just had the good sense, like, I'm not going to spoil the episode for people. Just because that seems like it comes with the job. I don't know why you would have to ask, but Andy gets a lot of screeners for The Flash and other shows. And he says, we are definitely given instructions on things we have to absolutely avoid in advance reviews when embargoes lift. Once something is aired after its time slot, a review can be fully published. So this is not out of the realm of possibility for reviewers and critics. I don't know why they act like it's such a big deal when it's such a common practice. Andy also says Superman and Lois owes more than a thank you. They literally are borrowing some things for the DCEU Superman. Yes, they are. So, So I think that is probably going to do it for this review. A real mixed bag here. I would probably give it like a D- if I had to grade on the scale. I thought a lot of the writing was a little weird, and things were not backed up. And there just wasn't an attempt to actually analyze this film. So if I had to grade Tim's review here, I think I'm going to give it a D-. He had a couple of good things in there, but it was not enough to really wow me here. So I'm going to give a D- to Tim's review from the New Republic. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week's live stream. If you missed this live, I hope you'll consider sharing your thoughts in the comment section below. If you ever have any questions about when I'll be live, like David did, check out this YouTube channel. I'll be scheduling streams in advance when I am available. I try to be consistent when Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes things come up. I might be out of town. Things are going on, but generally I'll let you know in those scheduled streams. Also, if you have a BVS review that you would like to share that you think was written well, and at least even if it's a negative review, if it was written well, I'll take negative reviews that were written well, but just a review that you thought did a good job. We talk a lot here about reviews that maybe didn't do such a good job, but I'm curious if you know of reviews that you want to share that maybe did do a good job of analyzing BVS. So if you have one of those reviews, drop a comment below and I'll share it with everybody in future live streams and future reading reviews with Rebecca. Let's see. I think I'm still I think the link that I've been including for the Breast Cancer Research Foundation of Alabama, I think is still good in the video description. I haven't checked the last time. I've been just dropping it in there. So if you feel like you want to donate to a good cause, that's one I'm really passionate about because I am a breast cancer survivor. My mother is a breast cancer survivor. So I'm really passionate about raising money for research for that. So if you want to do that, I also believe I have a link to my friend Mike's Make-A-Wish Foundation fundraiser. So if you would like to support his fundraising efforts for Make-A-Wish, which is a great charity that does a lot of good for kids, especially, check that out because Mike is a good friend of mine and he is also a big DC fan. So if you want to help out another DC fan, check that out in the video description below. And if you're able to give, anything is good. So don't think anything is too small. Don't worry about that. But anything you're able to give, if you do, thank you in advance for doing so. Okay, well, I guess it is time to let live stream voiceover Rebecca get us out of here. If you would like to see more of these live streams, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel at youtube.com/duckmilkprod. If you'd like to keep in touch with me personally, you can follow me on Instagram at The Derby Kid and on Vero at Derby Kid. You can hear my thoughts on the CW Supergirl TV series and all things Kara Zor-El over at Supergirl Radio by visiting supergirlradio.com, subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts, or subscribing to the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel, which you can find at youtube.com/DCTV Podcasts. Also, please check out the Justice League Universe podcast for in-depth analysis on the DCEU films, including Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And before I go, I hope that this live stream video series will inspire you to think more critically and thoughtfully about film and storytelling. I'd like to leave you with this quote from C.S. Lewis's book titled An Experiment in Criticism. "The truth is not that we need the critics in order to enjoy the authors, but that we need the authors to enjoy the critics." My name is Rebecca Johnson, and I love Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And I am publishing a series of videos exploring the reasons why I am such a fan of Zack Snyder's film. In this series, you'll find my thoughts on topics that matter to me, like Larry Fong's cinematography, character analysis on Lex Luthor and Lois Lane, the Christian imagery, what I find hopeful about the movie, and yes, I'll address the critical reception. So if you're interested in any of those topics, I hope you will get something out of this series and find out why Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice has had such a profound, heartfelt, and inspiring impact on my life.